back to our series on the economic theory of agency law. I'm Professor Seth C. Oranburg, and in this episode, we're exploring the costs and benefits of authority in agency relationships. Authority might seem like a straightforward concept. It's granting someone the power to act on your behalf. But its implications are far more complex than that. Economists and legal scholars alike have wrestled with the question. Does delegating authority reduce transactions costs? Or does it simply shift them? It turns out the answer isn't simple, and it's impactful. So to understand why this question matters, we're going to look at transactions costs through the lens of entrepreneurial theory. We're going to draw on ideas from Frank Knight, Joseph Schumpeter, and Israel Kirzner. And of course, we'll return to Hotch Hotch to see how these theories play out in practice. Let's begin with some basics. Transactions costs are the hidden costs of conducting any kind of economic exchange. They're like friction. They're wasted heat energy. They include search costs, bargaining costs, monitoring costs, and enforcement costs. In agency relationships, these costs show up when you're trying to find the right person for the job, or negotiate the terms of a relationship, or ensuring someone does what you asked, or holding them accountable when they don't do it. Delegating authority is often seen as a way to streamline processes. By empowering agents to make decisions, principals avoid the inefficiencies of micromanagement. But there's a catch. Delegation also introduces risks and uncertainties, which create transactions costs of their own. It turns out it's turtles all the way down. We're just balancing transactions costs and hopefully minimizing them. Now that was a little abstract, so let's go back to Hotch Hotch, where the mayor has been dealing with this exact dilemma. The lazy town bee wasn't producing honey, so the mayor delegated authority to a bee watcher. At first, it seemed like a smart move. Delegating meant the mayor could do mayor things, like figuring out what road to construct next, while the bee watcher took care of the bee problem. But the bee watcher didn't perform as expected. So the mayor added a watcher to monitor the bee watcher, and then a watcher to monitor the watcher. And pretty soon the entire town was employed in watching watchers. The original goal, getting the bee to produce more honey, was lost in a sea of efficiency. The story sounds absurd, but it's a perfect metaphor for trade-offs involved in delegation. And we see here how each layer of watchers add new transactions costs. Every time the mayor hired a watcher, he had to find that person, hire them, train them, had to negotiate terms, then monitor their performance, enforce accountability, maybe take on legal risk for wrongful termination. All of this while losing sight of the original problem. Economists would say the mayor's approach failed to balance the benefits of delegation with the costs of managing it. So how do we make sense of this mess? How could we do better? To answer that, let's turn to entrepreneurial theory. Frank Knight, one of the founders of modern economic thought, introduced the concept of uncertainty. Knight distinguished between risk, which is measurable, and true uncertainty, which is not measurable. Delegating authority often involves Knightian uncertainty, unmeasurable uncertainty. Because principals can't predict how agents will behave or what the outcomes will be. The degree to which there'll be agency costs is not measurable. In Hotch Hotch, the mayor didn't know whether the bee watcher would do their job, take a nap, or decide to supervise a different bee altogether. This uncertainty required the mayor to invest in additional layers of supervision, and that drove up transactions costs. Joseph Schumpeter, another giant of economic thought, focused on entrepreneurship as a process of innovation. Schumpeter argued that entrepreneurs disrupt the status quo by combining resources in new ways. When principals delegate authority to entrepreneurial agents, they're essentially betting on the agent's ability to innovate and create value. But innovation comes with risks too. In Hotch Hotch, imagine the bee watcher decides to try a new strategy, buying an expensive hive on credit to motivate the bee. This might work, or it might fail spectacularly, leaving the mayor to deal with the financial fallout, because the mayor, as the principal, has responsibility for the agent's contracts. Schumpeterian entrepreneurship highlights the tension between innovation and uncertainty in delegation. Israel Kirzner, meanwhile, described entrepreneurs as individuals who are alert to opportunities. Delegating authority to a Kirznerian entrepreneur means giving them autonomy to identify and exploit opportunities the principal might miss. But this kind of delegation also requires trust, because the principal can't always monitor the agent's decisions in real time. Back in Hotch Hotch, what if the bee watcher noticed that a neighboring town's bees were thriving and has tried to strike a deal to relocate the lazy town bee? That might be a brilliant move, or it might go completely against the mayor's intentions. Kirznerian entrepreneurship shows how delegation can unlock new possibilities, but also create new transactions costs, especially when communication breaks down. So where does that leave us? Delegating authority isn't just about reducing transactions costs. It's really about managing them. Principals have to weigh the benefits of specialization and autonomy against the risks of uncertainty and inefficiency. The story of Hotch Hotch reminds us that delegation without structure leads to chaos. But too much structure stifles creativity and adds cost. In the real world, businesses face these trade-offs every day. Think about corporate governance. Shareholders delegate authority to a board of directors. The directors delegate authority to executives, and the executives delegate authority to managers. This chain of delegation allows corporations to operate on a massive scale, but it also creates opportunities for misalignment. If an executive acts outside their authority or prioritizes their own interest over the company's, the resulting costs and inefficiencies from those costs can be devastating. The Enron scandal is a classic example. Executives at Enron had significant authority, but they used it to manipulate financial statements so that their own stock value would increase. This created enormous costs for other shareholders and for the broader economy. The key to managing these challenges lies in finding the right balance. Contracts, fiduciary duties, and monitoring mechanisms all play a role in reducing transactions costs. In Hotch Hotch, the mayor might have avoided their problems by setting clearer expectations for the bee watcher, by aligning incentives with rewards for productivity, or by limiting the need for additional layers of supervision. Maybe the mayor could have used AI technology to monitor them in the future. In corporate settings, aligning executive compensation with long-term performance goals can achieve similar results, reducing the risk of opportunistic behavior. As we've seen, the relationship between authority and transactions costs is anything but simple. Delegation can unlock incredible value by leveraging specialization and entrepreneurial alertness, but it also introduces uncertainty and risk. By understanding these dynamics, principals can make smarter decisions about how to delegate authority and manage the costs that come with it. In our next episode, we'll dive into fiduciary duties, the legal and economic tools that help principals and agents navigate these challenges. Fiduciary duties create accountability and trust, making them essential for reducing transactions costs and managing risk. And of course, we'll check back in with Hotch Hotch to see if the mayor has finally figured out how to manage those watchers and their lazy town bee. Thank you for joining me on this episode. I'm Professor Seth C. Oranburg, and I look forward to continuing this journey with you in episode 4.